a quick overview. If you have any problems hearing me or anything, just keep the chat box open. All right, so we are attempting to release vital signs. Can everybody see the screen? Logan and Cheryl, you can let me know. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so today's releases are 2 of our normal 8 chapters, Census, Demographics, and Sustainability. And just by way of background, we are the Baltimore site of the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership. We're a learning network of over 30 cities around the country, and we're actually really deeply learning right now with our partners around the country about how local projects like ours can help communities respond, kind of given the unusual circumstances around COVID-19. If you want to learn more about other cities, the link is there. It's just neighborhoodindicators.org. And our job is basically to try and put out data for communities to use. We are issuing this year the 18th edition of the Vital Signs Report, which is for communities, thanks to our many sponsors. And even though there's over 110 indicators, we this year, just given the remote work, are trying to release it in waves. So today we'll be releasing 2 more chapters. Last week we released Children and Health and Crime and Safety. So the webinar for that week is there. Today it's Sustainability and Census Demographics. And like I mentioned, even though it's quote unquote only 2 chapters, there are a lot of indicators even in those 2 chapters. We're also pretty excited to announce that we, this year for the first time, are releasing fully interactive narratives to go along with the release of the data. So you can kind of read along about what these indicators mean, how they're important, and work that's been going on in the city around these topics. So like I mentioned, it's only 2 chapters, but it's all of these indicators. You can see on the left-hand side is all of our census demographics, which I'll show you how we get that information around socioeconomic status, race. And then on the right hand are our sustainability chapter, which is around greening, cleaning, transportation, and energy, and voting, and community engagement through voting. So those are the ones that I'm going to kind of highlight, and those are the ones that are now available on our website. So census demographics, I hope everybody has filled out their census and told their neighbors to fill out their census and told their college-age students to also fill out their census. And we have, unfortunately, if you look at the response rates right now for Baltimore City, they are lower than the statewide average. So whatever we can do to try and get that response rate up, we have some shot towards a full count. But the 2 data sources that are in the census, they come from the census. Obviously, the last time we have data around census is from the 2010 census, which is now a little bit old. But the census, when it comes around, which is why the 2020 census is so important, it is what's called 100% data. It's a census, but it's limited. It only asks a couple of questions, but it's a very important question. It asks how many people live in your neighborhood, which is actually the only time that we get kind of a really good measure of total population for a neighborhood at that small level. Unfortunately, it's just a snapshot in one point in time, and it's not as current as the American Community Survey or the ACS. The American Community Survey is sample data. Some of you might have had to actually respond to a sample survey. It's much more detailed information. That's why it doesn't go to everybody. It just goes to a few. But it's continuously administered. Every month a new sample goes out, and we get annual updates. So at the small level, at that census tract level, it's called a 5-year rolling average. And so the last one that we're releasing is 2014 to 2018. But because it's small area, it can potentially have a large margin of error. So we have to be really careful about how we discuss these indicators and how we track them over time. So number 1 thing that most people want to know about is race. So you can see this is a pretty typical kind of mental map that we probably have for Baltimore City. We have what we unfortunately call the black butterfly, or is known as the black butterfly. We have these kind of wings of the city that have predominantly African American population. And then the converse is we have what has been dubbed by Dr. Brown the white L, where we have predominantly high rates of, I won't say predominantly white population, I will say higher rates of white population. You can see, oops, I went one too far, I think. Sorry, in the white population, you can see that it's still, you know, there's some neighborhoods where we have 90% white, but it's actually pretty rare. The other two major kind of groups that are in the city are growing, actually, Hispanic population and the Asian population. You can see where their concentrated areas are for the Hispanic population in this kind of south and southeast area. And for Asian population, it's kind of right down the Charles Street corridor. And so when you combine that, you know, lots of different kinds of racial groups, what we like to show is actually the diversity index. And the diversity index is a measure of, if you pick two people at random in your neighborhood, what's the probability that they'd be of two different races? And that basically combines all of that information together to really look at diversity. And this kind of gives you a better picture of what we're looking at with respect to overall neighborhood diversity. And we now have 6 neighborhoods where there's no majority one race, which is Brooklyn Curtis Bay down in the south, Charles Village downtown, and then the 3 areas here on the East Coast, on the east side of Baltimore. So here we have other parts of the demographics is, of course, median household income. And you can see we have our highest incomes up here in the north, which is historic. But down here along the water, which is a relatively new phenomenon for Baltimore to see such high incomes right around the water. And so you can see that in just the last 8 years, the change in income has dramatically increased in those southern kind of waterfront neighborhoods. So South Baltimore, in inflation adjusted numbers, the median income has actually increased by $33,000. Which of course means that the whole neighborhood is kind of changing the flavor of what they used to be historically. And that becomes kind of something that, you know, becomes a source of tension in neighborhoods like that. And then what does this mean for youth in our neighborhoods? This is where we have lots of youth, the indicator on the left-hand side of your screen. And then unfortunately, where we have a lot of youth living in poverty, you can see that we have you know, high rates of not only children living there, but also children living in poverty in this east and west side of downtown. So that is a super quick overview of census. But then here we have sustainability. And if you talk about sustainability in the city of Baltimore, the number one thing that people want to talk about is trash. We had a lot of efforts in 2018 and 2019 around you know, styrofoam bans, plastic bag bans to try and reduce trash. And here's where you start to see dirty streets and alleys. These are based on 311 calls, dirty streets and alleys where people are calling a lot around 311. And then here on the right-hand side is where the clogged storm drains. And these are measures that we've been tracking for a long time. And we do see a little bit of reduction, especially in dirty streets and alleys between 2017 and 2018, which is good news. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's not trash. It could be just be that people aren't calling. So cleanliness is a big deal for sustainability, but then so again is our transportation and use of fossil fuels through our driving. So we have kind of remained pretty steady in the city of 60-ish% of our population that just drives alone. And if you look at the pattern here, you know, the outskirts of town driving alone, where we have pretty low density development, makes a little bit of sense, right? There's probably a little bit tougher to get transit out here to service these areas. But what is ironic in the middle of our city is that we have high drive alone right along the water here, right? I told you that these are now some of our highest income neighborhoods, but these are very dense neighborhoods. You know, they're meant to be walkable and serviced by transit, and we are not seeing a lot of uptick in use of transit. And instead, we have high drive alone to work. And this seems more to be kind of anthropological and not necessarily physical or service oriented. And maybe this is something that we can address from a different approach then maybe thinking about the fact that there's no service. There's plenty of service, and the urban form there kind of lends itself to non-driving use. So for those of you that might live in those areas, that might be something that we can look at. So obviously, if they're driving alone, they're not using the bus system. So that's one of the reasons why we asked the question, looking at kind of where we have utilization of the bus. We have very low utilization of bus right along the water, downtown being a pretty good exception, and then some of these inner harbor neighborhoods too. So it is kind of ironic that South Baltimore, which includes Locust Point, has our lowest bus ridership, and yet could be a place where we could probably increase bus ridership or some other transportation besides driving alone. Obviously, using transportation is probably a function of needing to use transportation, and you can see pretty high correlation where people do not have access to their own personal vehicles and basically having to use the transportation system because of that, because they don't have any other choices. And what this means, though, for a city in terms of our amenities, this 45-minute commute time is something that we've been really trying to focus in on, this idea of being a disconnected community because it takes you so long to get to work. And unfortunately, this particular measure is increasing over the last 10 years, going from 19.6 to 21.1%, increasing the number of people that are traveling more than 45 minutes to get to work. And we have such a huge disparity for what that is. So the highest commute time to work at that level is in Southern Park Heights, and the lowest is in Medfield. And so being a low commute time neighborhood has a lot of advantages that having so many people leave your neighborhood every day for so long actually doesn't help with social cohesion. And then the last thing, obviously one of the things that we do see, we've reported the 2018 numbers for voters, and you can see where we have high rates of voters, but we also have kind of these areas of voter deserts where we have some links on our website about research around areas where we are seeing kind of low participation. And again, look at the disparity. We have a high of the percentage of folks that did register and actually voted, 70% in Roland Park, but only 28% in Brooklyn Curtis Bay. And that's of the people that registered and qualified to vote, but they just didn't vote in 2018. It is up dramatically from the last 4 years, the last non-presidential election in 2014. It's up significantly, which is good news. And so we'll see what happens in 2020. All right, that was a super fast overview of what we're gonna talk about. And now I'm gonna give you a quick demo of anything in the chat room that I need to answer. Are you guys good? I'm gonna go to a quick overview of our website to show you some new features that we have on our website. And Cheryl and Logan, if you think I need to stop at any point, just let me know. Chrome, there we go. Okay, everybody can see, the website, hopefully. The screen sharing is working. This is our main website. It's bniajfi.org. Don't forget the JFI at the end. It stands for the Jacob Franz Institute. And give you a couple of ways. The first thing that you're going to see when you come into our website is, of course, 3 different ways to access vital signs. Access it by community, access it by topic area, and then access it by a specific indicator. And these things are also listed here in this drop-down here on the left-hand side around vital signs. So if you wanted to explore vital signs, and if you're new to using vital signs, you will basically see the kind of topic areas that we have listed. And let me just go through some of the indicators that I showed you in the quick presentation and show you how to interactively access that information online. So in sustainability, for example, and this is true for every topic that you go into, you can basically see all of the data that we have for that particular chapter. You can go into the bus loadings that we mentioned before. And what you can do from here pretty quickly is sort highest to lowest if you wanted to see what's going on, and then also copy either as a CSV, an Excel, PDF, or start printing directly. And then if you go straight to this link here, you'll go to a dedicated indicator page just for that indicator. So you could really kind of dive in and again, look at things in a tabular format. That's the first thing you see. Look at things in terms of bar charts, where you can kind of look at things sorted by kind of highest to lowest. So you can visually see these things. And then you can look at trends. In this case, this indicator is only 2 years old. So we don't have too many trends yet, but you can pick other neighborhoods that you can look at to see kind of what the trend is, even in these 2 years in relation to the citywide average. And then finally, you can look at maps, which does work. If anybody else has a problem looking at this, if you adjust the screen size, it actually popped up for me. So it didn't show up this second, but it does actually work. So that's sustainability. You can kind of go back and look at all of the indicators for sustainability again. There's a full map gallery. All of the maps that I showed you are available for you to download and use, and you've probably seen some of these maps in presentations that other people have done. They're kind of famous a little bit. And then the other way to get to the full report is if you click back up here at vital signs and go into the full report, you can see we're pretty excited to announce this interactive story map of our chapters. And here is, I'll go into demographics since I went into sustainability the other time. Once you click on it, you're going to be taken to a new tab, which goes on to our open data portal, and is a feature within our open data portal, and basically gives you a little bit of a narrative about why this particular topic is important, and then it goes through each of the sections of the indicators. So if you wanted to jump ahead to race, you can start to see what the issue is with respect to each one. There's a couple of interactive mapping sites here. So this is the one around diversity, and you can then click on each one to see what the actual diversity is. And then if you clicked on any of the hyperlinks here about the actual indicator itself, you go to our main website, which gives you back to that dedicated indicator page. In this case, it's for racial diversity. You can do the same thing. You can do indicator charts, you can do trends, and you can do maps. Again, if you adjust your screen size, it'll show up, I promise. So that is how you kind of go back and forth between our interactive story maps and our main website. And then if you wanted to go to a different chapter, last week we talked about crime and safety, and this week we talked about and children and health. This week we're talking about sustainability. The sustainability section, you can just click on it from the top and kind of read about sustainability. The overall open data portal, I'll show you how to get there from our main website. So I'm going to go, to our main website. If you click up here on the left-hand side, you can go to, the Vital Signs Open Data Portal. I'm going to go to the BINYA homepage, which is our main website. And to get to our Open Data Portal, there's a couple of different ways. You can get to it from this link down here, which says Open Data Portal. And if you open up the Vital Signs drop-down menu, you can also see the Open Data Portal. I'll go ahead and click on that. And this is our main open data portal, which actually takes you to projects that have open data resources. Vital Signs is actually our main project, but we have other ones which you might have heard of, including GeoLoom, and just released this week is a compendium to the Blueprint for Baltimore survey that the Open Society put out a couple of weeks ago. So from here, if you went into the open data portal, you'd be able to access not only the story maps that we mentioned, these chapter narratives that are down here at the bottom, but all of the actual open data itself. And I don't know, Cheryl, if you want me to drive like I did last time, and you can walk people through how to use the actual open data portal.
Hi there. Sorry, I needed to get myself unmuted. You can drive if you'd like. We didn't crash last week, so I
Great.
think it went well. So on our open data portal, we have a couple different ways of accessing the indicators themselves. You can either click on one of those little icons that'll take you to every indicator that is tagged census or crime or sustainability. In this case, Seema had clicked on census. And so this displays in this case, it looks like 27 indicators that we have under census demographics. So if you click on any of these data layers, so Seema, I don't know if you wanted to click on the percentage of children living below the poverty line. It's that first
Okay.
result up there. That will take you to uh, a, a page where you can then download the data. So at at first, you can explore the little map that's on the top. The different communities, they are kind of clickable. We have that little pop-up window so you can see the values for that community. And so for every year that we have this data available, we make it available here. So you can see it on the map, you can see it in the data table. Seema, if you scroll down a tiny bit, first I want to mention that there is the full definition for the indicator right there. And if you click on that more, it will open up the source for the data set. In this case, this data comes from the American Community Survey. And then below that are the years available. So these are the years that we have this data, that we've been tracking it, that you can access in this data set. Down below, we have a list of the attributes. So these are the fields that are within this data set. So obviously we've got community statistical area, so you can see what communities we're looking at, but then also the values for the indicators themselves. So when you do click on these, so for instance, the 2014 to 2018, you have to step back in time a little bit, think about your high school or middle school or college stats classes. These are histograms. So these show the frequency counts for the 55 communities. So you can see the overall distribution of how these communities generally stack up. So in this case, you can see that there are 10 communities, for instance, that have about 0 to 10% of their children living below the poverty line. And so if you just hover your mouse over, you can see that number, that is the count. So the number of those 55 CSAs into those different buckets. So that's all good, that's great, but how do you actually access the data if you want to download it? So over on the right-hand side, we have that little button that says download, and if you click on it, it'll give you a couple different options. So if you select spreadsheet, you can download a CSV file that you can open up in Excel that has, again, the full set of indicators for all the years that we have available. We have the KML or the shapefiles, file geodatabases, if you're like me, if you are a mapping nerd and want to bring this into either an online or a desktop mapping software. And then also, if you'd like to point to this data itself, we have the APIs where you can access these links so that you can directly plug our data and our indicators into whatever tools, visualizers that you are doing. Seema, if you'd like to click on the data tab. So we can also do a quick little preview of what this data looks like. You can then, of course, see there are 55 communities and then the values. You can do some filtering. So next to each of these, there's that little icon. It looks like a little flashlight pointed upwards, or looks also like a little funnel. If you click on that, you can enter in some values and get a filtered view. So let's say you're just interested in communities that are within a certain range. You can enter that, and then it will just display those communities within that range. And then what's really cool is that you can also download this filtered view. So we've also kind of got those download buttons. So it'll give you that option to just pull down. And of course, at the top, you can see the communities on the map that are in that filtered view. So we've got the downloads, we've got filtered view APIs. So the idea is to make this information really accessible for others that want to use this information and create their own tools, their own visualizations. So it's a companion, a more intermediate or advanced version of our website where you can also download the data to a spreadsheet, you can print it out, or you can download some Excel tables as well.
Okay, so that's a quick overview of our main website, and this is our open data portal. And I am going to turn off the recording, and we can go to Q&A. If I can figure out how to